Life is a workout, and Smoothie King is here to help you power through. Whether you're grinding out bicep curls or muscling the couch across the living room, crushing morning miles, or sprinting through back-to-back meetings, Smoothie King has fuel to help you maximize your workouts, own your recovery, and elevate your game. Give your body the energy, protein, and power it needs with a lineup of delicious smoothies made to help you conquer your goals. Only at Smoothie King.
St. Patrick's Day night, Dickie Cali walks in by himself into Bobo's social club. He's wearing a St. Patrick's Day outfit, green tie, check jacket, green pants, and he sits at the bar. Bobo nods to Frank Montalucci to get the gun, which he does and gives it to Bobo. So Bobo puts a shot on the bar and he says, "Dickie, this is a sign of respect for you to know you're always welcome here. And then we have no hard feelings." So Cali does his shot, and while he does, Bobo comes up from behind the bar, puts his hand on his shoulder, and fires 6 shots into his back.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Still got our friend Anthony Pesare here, legend in law enforcement, especially in the New England area. 40-plus years as a law enforcement professional. 24, I believe it was, with the Rhode Island State Police. And then, as I mentioned yesterday, he couldn't get enough of it, so he does 16 years as a police chief. He was a prosecutor. He's an author. He's a college professor. We'll probably bring him on here in a couple of years to find out about all his new occupations. This guy just keeps rolling. He's like the Energizer Bunny, I think. But, excuse me, as we finished up yesterday, we're talking about his career with the Rhode Island State Police. And again, they're a state police, not a highway patrol, which means they got to do both. They've got to do not only patrol on the highways, but also criminal investigations. And Anthony, you had gotten assigned to a unit that was referred to, the intelligence unit, but the colonel referred to it as the unit.
Correct.
And what's the significance of that again compared to the other detectives that are there?
So the significance of it is that the way the detective division is structured is that every unit, stolen cars, major crimes, narcotics, all answered to the detective commander, who was a captain, and the captain obviously would report to the major and the colonel.
Mm-hmm.
The uniqueness of the intelligence unit is the way Colonel Stone fashioned it was that the intelligence unit was led by a lieutenant, and that lieutenant reported directly to the colonel. Directly. So there was a uniqueness in it. And I think that had to do with the colonel was a strong believer in, loose lips sink ships.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a career with the Providence Police, so he knew what he wanted, what he wanted for his troopers was they were to be incorruptible. I never, ever in 24 years was ever told by the colonel or anybody else, don't look under that rock. Don't investigate that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the prideful things we had is that wherever you needed to go, he would back you up. So it was unique in that respect, caused a little friction maybe because the captain of detectives assumed he should know everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the uniqueness of it, where you were basically working directly for the colonel.
And your focus was primarily on what?
So when I was in the intelligence unit, so now we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s, the primary and only focus for the most part was Italian-American organized crime, specifically the Patriarca crime family. Because at that time in Rhode Island, they were the strongest organized crime group. The way it was explained to me is if you think about Rhode Island during this period of time, there were 3 concentric circles of power.
Mm-hmm.
There was the state government, there was the Catholic Church, and there was organized crime. And those 3 jockeyed for power, had relationships between each other, but it predominated Rhode Island society, especially in Providence.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting that. I had seen a reference to that, but I didn't look up to see what the three circles were.
Mm-hmm. I can't take credit for it. I don't know who told me about it, but it makes perfect sense, you know.
It does.
And Rhode Island is predominantly Catholic, so the church had a strong say in just about everything. State government was strong, and of course, organized crime was organized crime.
Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned yesterday, everybody, Anthony here has written 2 books. I've read the first one, They Always Win. And the reason I mention that again here, and I'm going to mention it at the end of the presentation or interview and tell you where you can find his books again. But one of the things that was brought up in your first book, and it's loosely based on your career. Mm-hmm. It's a work of fiction, but there's a lot of similarities in the what we've been talking about on here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kept coming up was some of the people distrusted you because you were of Italian descent, and of course, the organized crime was Italian organized crime. Was that true?
No, that's fiction. For the most. That's fiction, but it was a vehicle by which Gino stands out and is different. Mm-hmm. Now, were there frictions? Because at the time I was on the state police, there weren't a lot of Italian Americans on the state police. So, you know, I remember, I'll give you an example. When I was in the academy, the State Police Academy, 1974, invariably a speaker would start his presentation by saying, "Are there any Italians in the class?" And I would have to raise my hand. Okay. And then he would proceed to tell a joke, the butt of which was the Italian was stupid.
And you have that in the book, and I thought that was a joke.
Yeah, no, it was true. And hey, listen, I should have been strong enough to say something, complain. But back then, I would have been gone in 2 weeks, you know, as disgruntled. So yeah, there was a bit of that, but I've seen it when I was growing up. This draw towards organized crime, and then unfortunately for Italians, there's always going to be that stigma of being associated with organized crime. Yeah.
And when I'm talking in front of law enforcement groups, a lot of times, you know, you try to tell jokes here and there just to lighten the mood up a little bit. And I do it as a joke because there usually are FBI agents, and I'll ask, "Is there anybody from the FBI in here?" You know, some of my best friends are bureau agents or retired bureau agents, and we've had some fantastic guests on here from the bureau. Yeah, but there's one thing in common amongst all American law enforcement agencies: we all bust on the FBI.
Oh, absolutely, you have to. You have to.
Oh, and let me tell you, you don't slide; they'll bust right back on you.
We used to call it Federal Friday. We could never find anybody on a Friday.
Oh, I might have partaken in a few of those. But invariably, when you did that, something came up on the weekend and you got called out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You got paid back.
Yeah.
So, and I asked you yesterday about the neighborhood you grew in versus Federal here, where the organized crime was located. And I think I must have picked that up in the book that Gino grew up in the same neighborhood as the Italian crime mob members.
Well, it was neighborhood adjacent, I guess the best way to put it.
Okay.
So Federal Hill is close to the center of Providence, and then it borders Oneyville, which is part of the Silver Lake section. So I guess the immigrants or the people, the Italian Americans who were living in those tenement houses in Providence kind of moved to Silver Lake because there were more houses than tenement houses there. But right on my Plainfield Street and Webster Avenue, I remember it. That's where we lived, in those houses in that area, that there was a contingent of mob guys that would hang out on the corner every night. And so I saw the flashy cars. I saw the money. I saw how you could be very easily drawn in. I mean, I was a paper boy making $1.50 a week, and there were kids my age, guys my age, driving around in these brand new Chevy Chevelles. So it was quite glaring to me. And I also I tell this story all the time because I really like it. It's my career as a mobster, I call it. So when I was young, I'm like on a pedal bike. So there was a guy named Ernie, whose cousin lived in the same house I did. She was on the first floor. We were on the second. So Ernie says, hey, kid, take this bundle and bring it up to Pete's Spa. I said, okay. I pedal my little bike up. I drop it off, come back. He gives me $10. $10. I'll do it again. And what I started to do was buy baseball cards. You know, the ones with the gum in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So one day my mother comes into my room. She goes, where are you getting the money for all these cards? I'm not giving it to you. I said, well, Ernie pays me. She goes, what?
She knew who Ernie was.
Oh, she knew. And Ernie had the misfortune of visiting his cousin one day, and my mother went down like a mother bear, and she was like, I never saw a mobster scared like that. He was like more afraid of my mother. And she said, don't you ever ask him to do anything like that. I was bringing gambling slips. I didn't know I was transporting gambling slips.
Yeah.
So that was my short career as a mobster. But yeah, so Atlas Avenue was the center of organized crime. That's where Raymond Patriarca Sr. had his office, called Coin-O-Matic. It was a vending machine company. And then, as I said, as you spread out from the city, Silver Lake, predominantly Italian.
So, I mean, you told us about your short stint there as a mobster, but the temptation had to be pretty great, wasn't it?
It was great when you're young.
Yeah.
But as you get older and you see people taken advantage of, you see people that owe loan sharks money that they'll never pay off. And you just realize that, you know, what you see in the movies and television and what really goes on is totally different.
Right.
And I didn't want that. I didn't want that life in and out of jail and all that stuff. And I fell in love with becoming a police officer, and that's the path I followed.
Good for you. Good for you, man. So that, you know, I mean, Providence is not New York City. So did they know that you were going to become a cop, or that you became a cop?
The people of my neighborhood did, yeah. And I don't remember, I mean, if there were nasty comments or things like that, I never let it bother me.
I guess mutual respect.
Yeah, mutual respect. I've always said this, that I was never afraid or worried about myself or my family, because back then, as they say, back in the day, there were rules. We followed the rules and they followed the rules. And if we got them fair and square, we were accosted doing business. I tell young officers all the time, you arrest a hardened criminal, you're less likely to get hurt if you do it right than you go to arrest the bookkeeper who's never been arrested in his or her life, whose life is going to be shattered by this arrest. That person's probably more dangerous to do something and act out than this guy who's been through the system 1,000 times. So it was like unwritten rules, you know, and they treated us with respect for the most part, and we treated them with respect. And they knew we were coming. They knew we were going to work hard. And, you know, that's what we did.
Well, this guy, Raymond Patriarca Sr., and we mentioned yesterday, direct ties to the Genovese family in New York City. Apparently, I was shocked by this. I was doing a little research on him, and he was testifying before a congressional subcommittee. And he made a really stupid statement to the Kennedy brothers, and we're talking about John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, saying, you two don't have the brains of your retarded sister, referring to their sister Rosemary, who had developmental challenges and then through medical processes, just suffered the rest of her life from it. And then, of course, JFK gets elected president, and Bobby comes along, and what a stupid thing to say.
I know. And I think that's in and around the time the FBI illegally planted the wiretaps in Raymond's office.
Legally, did you say?
Illegally. Yeah.
Under J. Edgar?
Under J. Edgar. I believe so, yeah.
Because he wasn't, J. Edgar, he didn't subscribe to there being a mafia, did he?
No, he didn't. Not at all, until Bobby Kennedy came along. And then he had, hearings, and he pretty much told him, you're going to have to deal with this now. In fact, Colonel Stone testified before Congress that there was, in fact, an organized crime family in Rhode Island, and there were families throughout the United States. So he was finally forced, I believe, to recognize that this was a threat. Because, as you just noted, he was into anarchists and, people who want to overthrow the government. He didn't really think that that was an issue he needed to deal with.
Wow. And now today, that's one of their main focuses.
Exactly. Yeah.
Was Ray Sr., was he violent?
Well, yeah, in his past. So Ray grew up in the Worcester area, and he was very efficient in taking over his back crime family. So he took over the crime family in Worcester and decided that he would move the headquarters to Providence. Now, Raymond was known for bribing officials and police officers. He literally bribed someone in Massachusetts, the judge, I believe, and he got off on a robbery charge. And subsequently, I think the judge's assistant, the governor's assistant, was fired because of the relationship, but he was never charged with it. So he comes to Rhode Island with this reputation of being able to bribe and control officials. And that was his strength. And that's what he did. So he was pretty savvy in the political world. And he ruled his family with an iron fist. If you got out of line with Raymond, example, 2 bookies are running a gambling operation, weren't kicking back to him. They were warned. Well, one day they were in a supermarket on Pesare Avenue, part of Silver Lake. Gunman rolls up, shotgun, kills them both, and takes off. That was the message. You kicked back, you participated, or you were gone. One thing I have to mention, though, is that, and I hear this all the time, is that when organized crime was at its prime, that not only did it engage in criminal activity, but it patrolled its own neighborhood. It kept its own neighborhood safe. Many times I would, after giving a presentation about organized crime, somebody will come up to me. For example, a woman said, I just wanted you to know, I was walking home. I was in high school, walking home from my friend's house. It was about 10 o'clock. Big limousine pulls up. Window rolls down. It's Raymond Sr. Young lady, what are you doing out on the streets at this hour of the night? And she explains it to him. So he takes her back to her house and says, you shouldn't do that.
Wow.
A more personal story. When I was on the state police, after the neighborhood changed, Raymond had died and the composition of the neighborhood changed. My 84-year-old aunt was standing on Atwells Avenue waiting for a bus. Someone came up behind her, snatched her purse, knocked her to the ground, and broke her shoulder. So I go to see her in the hospital. I said, I'm so sorry, Auntie, because that's what you call your aunt if you're Italian, Auntie. Auntie, I'm so sorry what happened to you. I hope that we can find out who did it. She said, Anthony, you're a state trooper, and I love you, but this would have never happened if Raymond was alive.
Well, was Ray Jr. in charge now?
Yeah, he probably was. Yeah, or it was in flux. It might have been in flux right after he passed, but yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, and I couldn't argue with her.
You're right, Annie.
Yeah,
oh, man.
You're right, Aunt.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So you say when he ruled with the iron fist, and were they involved in narcotics as well as all the other gambling bits and loan sharking, extortion?
I think even to this day, mobsters will tell you they don't deal in narcotics because of the. Yeah, I know they'll tell you that.
Yeah.
What I saw in Rhode Island is that they would take the money, the kickback, the 10% from drug dealers, but what they started to do lately is that they'll insure a load of drugs. So if you have a load of drugs coming out of New York City, you got to get it to Providence. you pay them a certain percentage of whatever the load is worth, and they'll make sure they'll follow whatever they need to do to make sure that load gets to Rhode Island.
Really?
Yeah, and historically, there have been, well, Paulie, who was the head of the Gambino for Castellano, head of the family in New York, the Genovese family. He was strictly against drugs, no drugs, no drugs. And John Gotti, who was in the family, was really into drugs. His brother did time for drugs. And he kept telling the other bosses, we need to get into this business. And they wouldn't let him do it. So Big Paulie going about his business. And so what happened is Big Paulie's wife was infirmed, and so he had a housekeeper come in, but he started sleeping with the housekeeper. So when this information got to the 5 families, because they're all about respect, they didn't care if he had a girlfriend, they didn't care any about that, but the fact that he was sleeping with this woman under the roof of his wife was very, very disrespectful. And so that's when they gave John Gotti the okay to take him out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That respect thing has gotten a lot of people killed, hasn't it?
Yes, it certainly has.
Even today, you look at the outlaw motorcycle gangs or just the thugs out there, you disrespected me. We had a guy come in our neighborhood here, and we live on a small lake, and the man next door loved him to death, Joe. He was the first person to welcome us in the neighborhood, and he's still pretty stout for his age. He's retired, but he's still pretty stout. Mm-hmm. And our property lines actually go out into the lake, so we own parts of the lake. And this kid, there's no trespassing signs out, and this guy comes through there, and he was here last year, and I heard the arguing between him and Joe and last year, and they're, the guy's just cussing and calling Joe everything but what he is, a nice guy. And so I said, hey, guy, listen, we don't want any trouble here, but our property lines do go out into the lake. And so you literally are trespassing. There's 1,000 lakes here in Orlando to choose from. Yeah, Can you go to another one? And his thing was, see, I'll talk to this man because he's not disrespecting me. You disrespecting me. He's showing respect to me. Well, this year he shows up, and I was here in my office working on the podcast, actually, and I get a text message from my wife that says, get out back now, call 911. Oh, like, that's not good.
Yeah.
And so we got cameras on the back of the house, and it records everything. Joe's wife was telling the guy, look, you're trespassing on our property. Please leave. And the guy gets real irate with her. And actually, the backyard of Joe's property has a garden in it, so there's a fence around it. And he jumps the fence and pushes Marie. Now, you don't do that.
Wow.
I mean, and Marie's just the sweetest lady I think I've ever met in my life. And so he jumps back across the fence. Well, Joe hears it. He comes out. He doesn't say a word. He just goes around the side of the house and gets his water hose, drags it back around there, and just sprays the guy with a full blast of water. Well, this guy jumps the fence and comes over, and him and Joe get in a little tussle there. By the time I get out there, he's back across the fence. But he's yelling, I'll kill you. How can you disrespect me? I'll kill you. Of course, we called 911. I got the deputy. We're out in the county, so we got the deputies out here, and they took care of business. But all because of this stupid little word called respect.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. We had a murder in Rhode Island where 2 people were in dispute over the hedges between the 2 properties. And you have to respect my property line. You're not respecting. And one of the neighbors went crazy and shot and killed the guy next door over hedges. I'm like, wow.
Well, I mean, that brings up the stand your ground law we have here in Florida. So when the police reviewed our video of what happened, the guy was wrong. He shouldn't ever.
No. He
should have been here to start with, but he certainly should not have pushed Marie. But then they're saying, well, Joe, you sprayed him with a water hose. That's a form of assault. And he's like, wait a minute. So if I'd had a gun and that guy jumped the fence on me and I shot him dead, I'm good to go. But if I spray him with a water hose, that's assault. And the deputy's like, as odd as that sounds, yes, that's true.
Wow.
It's just, okay. It's sad. It's sad that things like that happen today.
I know.
So there's a guy that was involved with this group called Bobo. Who is that and what's his role?
So, when we had 3 witnesses in protective custody, the reason we had them was that in 1975, Dickie Cali was murdered in Bobo's social club. He's buried out in Rehoboth, Massachusetts. And a young police officer who ironically became chief in the future. There was an area that people used to dump stolen cars in. So he starts his patrol. It's not snowing. Driving around town. Starts to snow. He drives by the lot and he sees tire tracks going in. So he says, I'm going to take a ride down there. Maybe I get a stolen car out of it. And he gets there to the end of the road or end of the tire tracks and he doesn't see anything. So he tries to turn around and gets stuck in the snow. So he pops his trunk to try to get some kind of traction under the wheels, crowbar or whatever. He looks down, he sees blood, trickles of blood, and he follows the trail and he sees this area where, the snow's on top of the ground and then there's this indentation. Brings the tire iron over and goes like this. And it goes right down. So he calls for help. They dig up Dickie Calley's body. 1975. Police investigate. Nothing. In 1983, this is a while after the murder, right? One of the people who was involved, supposedly, called the state police and said, look, I know who killed Dickie Calley. I was there when it happened. So they take him out of prison and they debrief him. We debrief him. And he says, look, I'm in prison in Massachusetts doing 15 to 20 years for the baseball bat beating of a union official in Fall River, and I didn't do it. And the person that did it, Frank Martellucci, went up there with somebody else on Bobo's direction and baseball bat beat this union official who wouldn't go along with a friendly contract for the owners of the mill or whatever it was. So the Providence police, knowing that Moon DiOrio was close to Frank Martellucci, they kind of, and the guy that was attacked actually identified Moon. So he says that if I did this 20-year bid, I'm in my 50s. I'm going to die in prison. And I didn't do this. He said there was a point where the prosecutor offered us 5 years to plead. I could have done the 5 years standing on my head. But Martellucci wouldn't take it. And Bobo made us go to trial. Well, they went to trial and they got convicted. So there he is sitting in his cell. I'm going to die here. I'm young. How can I get out? Well, he tells the story to the state police and they take him out. Well, now the dominoes start to fall. So Martellucci comes forward and another individual, Billy Furl, comes forward. And the first thing they say is Moon's full of shit. He wasn't even there. But then they give an honest how the murder occurred. And what happened is that Dickie Calley was a made member of organized crime. And he was not acting properly. The boss was in prison, and he was drinking, doing drugs. And what really happened that kind of sank him was that there was a civilian, and the mafia considers people that are not part of their lives civilians. You're not supposed to harm them. They're the ones that may place the bets, take out the loans. There was an elderly man, civilian, in a phone booth. There were phone booths back then.
Yeah, I remember those.
They're like drive-ins. They've all disappeared.
True.
He pulls the old man out because he wants to use the phone and beats him. So that was a no-no. And Martellucci said that what happened was Bobo and Dickie had bad blood. Dickie Calley's brother went into Bobo's social club and said something disrespectful, and Bobo threatened to beat the hell out of him. So now there's that fiction. So they have a sit down with the underboss, Nicky Bianco, and Dickie Calley says to the underboss, you better put a leash on this guy, talking about Bobo.
Mm-hmm.
So the meeting breaks up, and his crew, now this is all from the witnesses. This is their story. The crew says, Bobo says to them, don't worry about it. Just be prepared. Dig a grave somewhere. Make sure you have a gun in the car. Okay. St. Patrick's Day night, Dickie Cali walks in by himself into Bobo's social club. He's wearing a St. Patrick's Day outfit, green tie, check jacket, green pants, and he sits at the bar. Bobo nods to Frank Montalucci to get the gun, which he does and gives it to Bobo. So Bobo puts a shot on the bar, and he says, Dickie, this is a sign of respect for you to know you're always welcome here, and then we have no hard feelings. So Cali does his shot, and while he does, Bobo comes up from behind the bar, puts his hand on his shoulder, and fires 6 shots into his back. Now he flops on the floor. Now there were old men in there playing cards. Bobo's cousin was passed out from drinking on a couch. Everybody just screams and screws. And so Bobo said, okay, bring Dickie's Cadillac around. They bring it around. They throw Cali in the trunk. They're about to close it, and Bobo says, wait a minute. Gets a big butcher knife and stabs him like 6 or 7 times. And they said, why are you doing that? He said, it'll make the body rot faster.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So Montalucci and Furley take the car to where that grave was dug in Somerset, and they dump him there, and they figure that's the last they're going to hear of it. So they're shocked when they find out. So Bobo just says, hey, just lay low. Lay low, don't say anything. And sure enough, they thought it had passed until Diorio came out. So it was kind of brilliant on Diorio's part to get himself out of prison. And all 3 ended up in the witness protection program.
One of them, and I'm remembering this from the book, where one of the guys in prison, they had put a mixture of oil and butter in his light bulb, which was kind of like a prison
napalm.
Napalm, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that true?
It's true, and I got that from another witness we had in protective custody who had done time out in California, and he talked about prison napalm, and he said how they made it, so I just incorporated it into that story.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you see in movies, you and I know more about what really goes on than people not inside of law enforcement. But I mean, even that I didn't know that you could make something like that out of oil and soft butter.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Like I said, I didn't know, but I heard it right from the horse's mouth. Someone we had in protective custody, another mobster or associate. He wasn't Italian, so he could never be a made man, but he came forward after they shot him like 7 times, and no one knows how he survived. But he came into custody, and other troopers in the intelligence unit worked with him.
So when Bobo goes to jail, or goes to trial, I'm sorry, what was security like at the courthouses? Was there concern that they'd try and come and get him and save him? Or
yeah, there were a series of trials leading up to the Cali trial, and those were all not guilty. In this last trial, they assigned me as a case agent and 2 new prosecutors. So we had security. We closed off the streets around the courthouse. We had the entrances to the courtroom, troopers everywhere, Providence police everywhere. So, yeah, there was a great deal of security because he was a dangerous person. And, who knew if someone would try to bust him out? Well, not at all. I mean, I have a scene in the book which is fictionalized about someone trying to kill him. But no, never.
The defense attorneys in there, I mean, this, our Constitution said, we all have the right to counsel and face your accusers and be tried by a jury of your peers and all the things that go along with that. But these attorneys that come in are just, are these mob attorneys that come in to represent Bobo and all these other people?
Yeah, I would say that they were closely associated with them. And I've seen many occasions where attorneys get so enamored with the life that they start to do illegal things. We arrested an attorney who lived up in Lincoln that we used to, would let mobsters park their cars in his driveway because there was like an industrial park nearby and there was a jewelry place and they were always trying to break in. Again, that's another case handled by the intelligence unit, not by me. So we ended up getting arrested as an accessory. So, yeah, but the lawyers in this case, they were both very diligent, hardworking. One was out of Boston, and the other one was well known for having connections with the mob. At one time, the underboss of the family, I believe, was working as a paralegal in his office.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I hate to keep asking these questions because I don't want to give away the plot of the book, but and there's a lot of cool details, but was there really a surprise witness that came up in that last trial?
No, I made that up.
Okay. Well, you did good.
Thank you.
When I first read it, I'm reading, I'm thinking, that couldn't have happened. Well, maybe it did. You know, that's you did good on the book. I'm not kidding you. I really like that.
You.
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that character, we meet her first when I'm a young man as a lifeguard.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Talking about your sex life there.
Oh, man, that's my summer of 42.
Yeah, we're not going to say more about that because if you want to know, you got to go read the book.
Yeah, that's right. You got to read the book.
There's a little sex, there's a little violence, a little rock and roll in there.
You know, yeah. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
It doesn't get any better, right?
It doesn't get any better than that.
It always surprises people when they find out that I'm a rock and roll fan, you know, because his cops were supposed to be so conservative.
Yeah,
you know?
I know. Well, that's like, I got involved in theater, so I've done some acting, and, you know, I was looked at like cop acting. You know, it was interesting. But I always thought, someone told me this, Rick Sullivan, one of my lieutenants, said to me, find something of interest other than police work. Mm-hmm. Because I think what happens, I think you'll agree, is sometimes you become so myopic because you're with cops, surrounded by cops, with cops afterwards, and you sort of take on that mentality of us versus them, and it doesn't make you a better cop. It makes you a worse cop, I think.
Yeah.
So I think if you dabble in this and dabble in that, and have a podcast and write a book, I think it helps. You know, I think it helps make you a different person.
It does. It's very easy, especially after so many years, to become so jaded about it that you're suspect of everybody. You don't trust anybody. If they're not in our blue circle, we don't trust them.
Right. And then you have these police officers that bitch and moan about everything. Why didn't I get promoted? Why didn't I get this? This guy's an asshole. And then sometimes they'd be standing there and say, you're talking about someone and one of the troopers standing around you is like his best friend. Do you think he's going to tell you about that? And they're the same people you meet 20 years after they've retired and they're still bitching and moaning.
Yep. Nothing ever goes their way.
No.
And there's only one common denominator in all those stories, and it's them.
Yeah.
That light bulb never comes on.
Yeah. Have you looked in the mirror lately? And have you thought about all the things you said? And then you wonder why you never got promoted. Well,
true. Yeah. Let's just look back and see if you ever made a case. Probably
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Probably not a good case.
No.
Because of all your activities and where you grew up and just, you know, simply from knowing these people because you guys grew up in adjacent neighborhoods, did you ever receive any threats?
No, never received a threat. Was never threatened. Was never concerned about it at all. As I said, I played by the rules. We all did. And so we made cases and I never worried about it. Mm-hmm. There's an amusing story. So Bobo was doing time for the murders and they let him out on work release to work in a restaurant. My mother calls me. She says, Anthony, I just saw in the news that Bobo was out. I'm worried that something's going to happen to you. Now, I think back to that scene in The Godfather where the mobster has his wife start his car every morning
Yeah.
in case there's a bomb in it. So I said, Mom, don't worry. She goes, why not? I said, I have Mary stop my car every morning. But
I bet she didn't think that was funny.
No, you know what she said? That's good.
Oh, that's funny.
Good as long as her son was okay. That's good.
Well, did your family ever catch any threats?
No.
No.
I think they just knew the wrath of God would come down on them if they hurt anybody in our family, especially in that era. I don't think they would risk it. And besides, it's bad for business.
Right.
They want to say low key. They don't want everyone in the world. They don't want on the front page of the paper, Tony Pesare's daughter was kidnapped, or Tony Pesare's aunt was hurt. They don't want that. They don't want publicity. At least not the old world civilian types. Others like John Gotti, who traces his ancestry back to Naples, the Camorra, they are flashy criminals, and they want everybody to know about it. But that draws heat, and drew heat to him. But here, it was mostly Raymond was old world Sicilian mafia.
And his son, he took over while Dad was in prison. Is that right? So Ray Jr.?
Well, he took over when Raymond Sr. passed away.
Okay.
So he took over right after him. And that led to this whole path where the FBI recorded the induction ceremony. And so his rule was not very good. And he stood, the rank and file never saw him. He was never a real world gangster. The only crimes he committed was stealing insulation out of a house under construction. Flunked out of URI. Wow. But one thing I thought was ingenious was that Raymond Jr. had a son. And he wanted him to go to an academy, like the military academy. But you can't go to the military academy unless you're sponsored by a senator or a congressman. And he knew he couldn't do that. But he found this military school where if you graduate in the top 2, you get an automatic ticket to one of the academies. So he was trying to get his son there, but his son, he was never bright enough to get into an academy or a decent college.
Yeah. So
that's the way it was back then,
So, well, is the patriarchal family still in existence today, or they're a thing of the past?
They've been decimated, mostly because of the RICO, as you know. So when I first started, the only way you could get a boss was to get somebody to say that he conspired, like told you to murder somebody, and that was highly unlikely. Now RICO comes along, and RICO, for those who don't understand it, it's a law that attacks the organization as opposed to the individual. So if you're part of an organization, if you're the head of an organization and somebody in your organization commits murder, under RICO, you could suffer the same penalty as the murderer. So that decimated organized crime. I think like 13 or 14 people while I was there, we arrested and charged. And mobsters don't want to do big numbers anymore. There was a guy on the street many years ago called Peanuts Broccoli.
Yeah.
Right now, as you know, it's other organized crime groups, which are much more dangerous, I think, for law enforcement and prosecutors.
True.
Traveling Vietnamese gangs that drive across the country to do a home invasion. They're the cartels, they're Bloods, Crips. And they're all very, very much more dangerous, I believe, for law enforcement and prosecutors.
I agree. And you don't seem to hear that much about the 5 families in New York anymore. They used to be in the news all the time.
Yeah. No, I think it's just like anything else. What I've learned is that what they've done is made a conscious decision to return to basics. Basic money-making things that don't draw a lot of public attention. Gambling. Loan sharking, shaking down places. you don't see law enforcement concentrating on those things. And so they just sit back, and it's just like a steady stream of income from those crimes.
Well, they're afraid they'll bring Joe Pistone back up.
They don't want that. Believe me, they don't want that man out. He'd take them all down.
Yeah, he would. I think he still has the capability to do that as well.
I think he does too, yeah.
By the way, he was just on the largest podcast in the world is the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yes.
And Joe Pistone was just a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast here last week or two. Yeah.
Well, I bet his book sales went through the roof.
Yeah, his boy's doing all right. He's doing all right for himself.
Yeah, he's calling me every once in a while. You'll have it. I'm doing this reality show about unsolved murders. Do you know any murders that we could come in? I put him in touch with a local police department. I don't know if you ever did a show with them, but yeah, he's really something else.
He still keeps going.
Yeah,
still keeps going.
Yeah, he's like that ever-ready bunny.
When you retired from the state police, why did you decide to retire at that point?
So at the time I retired, Rhode Island had a state law that you could retire after 20 years, but you could stay 25. But at 25, you had reached your maximum pension and you had to leave. State law. Troopers usually between 20 and 25 start looking around. At 24, I had the opportunity to go to the Roger Williams University, the School of Justice Study, and I was the assistant dean for 4 years, and I was the dean for 2 years. And we had graduate degrees, undergraduate degrees, and we started something called the Justice System Research Institute, which was run by Denise Owens and Bob McKenna, retired police officers. And it was a place for police officers to get in-service training. A lot of the training that the state of Rhode Island or the police departments were unable to afford to do. And so they made that very successful. But after 6 years, I just wanted to get back into law enforcement because colleges and universities, as you know, have a very different culture, much different than the culture I came from. I'm not saying theirs was better than ours, but I was more comfortable in ours. And so I was lucky enough to apply for the Middletown Police Department job, and I was accepted. And that was a great experience. The hardest part of it was when I was hired, they said all I had to do was live in a radius, and my wife and I had just bought a house in Barrington, Rhode Island. So I figured I was all set. Then it got a little messy because of politics, and they said, okay, we'll give you the job, but you're going to move into town. So I had dug my haunches in by that point. I said, okay, I'll move in. So they give me the job. Now I'm driving home and I got to tell Mary, oh, by the way, we have to move.
Oh.
And being the good wife that she is, she took it on the chin. We moved. And now she says to me, you brought me here kicking and screaming, but I would never leave here. I love it.
Oh, so good for her.
It turned out okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I didn't point out was you not only earned your bachelor's degree, but you went quite a bit further past that, didn't you? Tell us about your college experience and when you earned your degrees.
Okay. So I had 2 years of college at Bryant, as I mentioned. So I just needed 2 more years. And at that time, the government was sponsoring education for police officers.
LEAP,
exactly. Yep. LEAP was a program. So I enrolled at Roger Williams University. It was called the Open Division because it was at night mostly for cops. And they gave me credit for the 2 years. So I finished the 2 years at Roger Williams and graduated. Then a couple of years later, I was getting restless. I wanted to do something else academically. And again, Richard Sullivan, I told you about. I told him what I was thinking about. I said, I'm thinking of getting a master's in criminal justice. And he said, don't do that. I said, why not? He said, get a master's in public administration. It's a different field. You'll meet different people. These are people mostly that are in government or some kind of public administration position. So I did that. And I'm so glad I did that because it opened up a lot of doors for me when I started looking for a job. So then, at the time, so this is 1990 now, I'm working on a case about a witness who was in protective custody at the Providence Police Department, and he died in a freak accident, and we were investigating that. My friend Harry Watson, who was my classmate, said, hey, the state is paying for cops to go to law school as part of the incentive bill. The incentive bill rewarded you for getting an associate's degree, maybe $500, then $1,000 for undergraduate, and then $1,500 for master's. But people started going to law school, and he said, listen, this isn't going to last very long. They're going to finally pull the string on this. So we took the test. We got into New England law in Boston. And so 3 nights a week, we would drive up with 2 other people that we hooked up with. We would drive to Boston. And so I did that for 4 years. And I got my law degree.
Wow.
Yeah. It was hard because when I finished school, my daughters were young. So when I finished school, we're sitting around the dinner table, and I tried to discipline my youngest daughter, Amy.
Uh-oh.
Turned to my wife and said, do we have to listen to him?
What did Mary say?
Mary said, she turned to me and said, you got to ease your way into this. Ease your way into this, okay? Things have changed in 4 years. You haven't been around. Because I would work. So in the state police, I was in detectives. You had to work one late night till 10 o'clock and went to school 3 nights. And then on Friday, I was just like a jellyfish. I just wanted to flop. And then Saturday and Sunday, my friend owned the law firm. It was John Lynch. He allowed me to go to his office on Saturday and Sunday and study during the day. So that was my life for 4 years, you know?
Wow.
So
you got a real queen for a wife there, buddy.
I am so lucky. So lucky. Very, very lucky.
That's what I refer to our families as our unsung heroes, because they allow us to go do what we think we're supposed to do, and then they take care of everything else in life. Yeah.
So the state police have a motto among many: those also serve who sit and wait.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And it's true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My wife and I, we've been married 41 years, not as long as you, but
congrats.
In law enforcement, that's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, a lot
unfortunately, I had the practice wife to start with, but didn't last too long.
At least you got the practice.
Yeah. Now, you retire from Middletown,
right?
But then you become a prosecutor?
So what happened was at Middletown for 14 years. Decided to retire in 2018. So they hired another chief. I was practicing law. I was doing estates and wills and that sort of thing, which is absolutely boring, but necessary, very necessary. And so I got a call from the town council president, and he said, are you interested in being the prosecutor for the town, assistant solicitor for prosecutions? He said, because the gentleman who has that job, we're elevating him to a municipal court judge. I said, I don't know. I've never prosecuted a case. I said, can I think about it? He said, yeah. He said, it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. He said, yeah, the meeting's at 7. I need an answer by then.
You got 15 minutes.
You got 15 minutes.
Jeez.
So I immediately called. I talked to Mary about it, and then I called the lawyer who was going to become municipal court judge, because he was the prosecutor. And I said, can I do this? He goes, yeah, absolutely. It's going to take you a while to get on your feet, and then you'll be fine. So I took the job, and I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I mean, you have to think on your feet, and, lawyers have this great trick, defense lawyers. So I used to try to set up something where I could talk to them before court starts, and, we could work something out, but no one ever came. No one wanted to do it. I finally figured out what they'd like to do is, once you're standing up and going through the cases, they like to come up and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I think we can do this. And so they try to catch you off guard,
Yeah, yeah.
But, I had a couple of trials, and it was just a great experience. So after about 2 years, and I was prosecuting Middletown police cops, so I had a very good relationship with them. There was some rumblings about the chief that they hired, and whatever it was, he decided to move on. And they called me and asked me if I would come back, which is really unusual in law enforcement. Yeah. So I said, yeah, I'll come back for a couple of years, get it back to where I think it should be, prepare for my my replacement. I would love to do that. So I did it for 2 years. I got Captain Ryan, who's now the chief, in place. And I said, okay, my job's done. And I left.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you didn't stop after that either, did you? You still, what are you doing now? Because it's not just one thing.
No. So I'm working on the third book, obviously. I'm doing a lot of work with Lynn to get the message out about this book. I like to work out. I do CrossFit 2 days a week. So I'm doing that and just waiting for the next thing to come along, I guess.
Are you still teaching?
I haven't taught. I have the opportunity to go back anytime I want. But I wanted to concentrate on the book. And I want to concentrate on publishing this book. But eventually I'll go back. I really like to go back and do some lectures or do some training on officer wellness and staying well, because we, in our profession, so much suicide, so much PTSD, it's really sad. So, and as you know, coming up when we did, it was macho. You never talked about it. You went out and had a few drinks, but you never asked for help, and you wouldn't think to ask for help because then the stigma would last with you forever. So yeah, I like to do things like that.
Did you ever suffer through anything that would be comparable to what we call today PTSD, through depression, anxiety?
Yeah. And so I remember the case like it was yesterday. So responded, there was a police officer from Foster, Rhode Island, who had been dismissed from the job from using excessive force against 3 teenagers, 18, 19. And so what happened is the 3 guys were at a garage, their friend's garage, repairing cars. And he got up to where they were and he walked through the area where the guys were, and he shot all 3 of them. There was a 4th kid under a car that he didn't see.
Jeez.
And the kid said, I could see his boots and him marching around, but I did not dare to move. So when he finished with the murders, that kid ran to a house and called for help. But the thing I think that stuck with me, and still sticks with me every once in a while, is that when I got there at the scene, which was horrific, one of the young men had put his hands up like this to sort of shield him from the bullets. And that's one of those things that it's like, I think someone once described it to me as like holding a ball under water between your knees that eventually is going to rise to the surface and you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's no way you can go through this career and be a worker and not come out with some scars and things you'll never forget. The other thing I'll never forget is I was a young detective, so this is probably in 79. There was a hit and run on 95, and this kid was out changing the diaper. He was in the breakdown lane, in the shoulder of the breakdown lane, and someone came by and ran him over and killed him. And my partner and I were assigned to that, and we could never solve it. We knew what kind of a car it was. But the registry wasn't sophisticated enough to, run all the green vehicles. So we would spend hours going through parking lots trying to locate cars because there was a paint chip left behind. FBI told us what kind of a car it was. But the fact that I never solved that still stays with me to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Did you ever get any counseling?
No, not for that. I never went for counseling in regard to that. But I did do peer support counseling. I did that, and it was very helpful. Rhode Island has a wonderful peer counseling team.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So we've had some traumatic events. We had a fire where a young child was burned and died. And so they came in So I've talked to people on that level, yeah. But I wouldn't hesitate to go to counseling if I felt that the balloon had
Yeah.
hit me in the head on its way up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
there's
think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
no, go ahead.
but there's also something to be said with having someone you can talk to, like a wife or a best friend, that's also very cathartic, very helpful. My wife, as we've talked about, has been a solid rock on which I built the foundation of my life. But also I have a friend that I grew up with. Our fathers worked together at Quonset Point. I've known him since Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and like I can say anything to him, and he can say anything to me. So I talk to him a lot about stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good advice there. And I just want to point out to our listeners that if you are dealing with depression or anxiety, you think things are getting really tough, there's a national hotline here in our country, 988. That's all you have to do. You can call it. You can text it. They have their man 24/7, 365. They speak English and Spanish. I believe it even extends up into Canada. They might not be the people that can help you at that moment, but they will get you in touch with somebody that can. So don't think that you have to go through any of these incidents that we might refer to as PTSD today by yourself. There's always somebody standing by to help. That's one of the things that we've slowly made a lot of progress on here in our country, and proud to say that we have. Mm-hmm. So 988, that's the number you just have to remember, 988. Anthony, before I let you go here,
sure.
I found a couple of awards that you had received. One's the Gerhard Mueller Innovator Award. What is that?
So when I was at Roger Williams University, there's an association of criminal justice sciences. So it's professors who teach criminal justice. And that award is named for one of them. And it's for innovation in the criminal justice education. So I got that. I was nominated for that for the work I did at Roger Williams, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And I think mainly because I established that, along with many others, established that Justice System Training Research Institute.
Wow. Very honorable.
Thank you.
And then I found where you were inducted into the Attorney General's Criminal Justice Hall of Fame.
Yeah, imagine that.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I know. You never go into this work expecting to get awards or anything like that. And so, yeah, the Attorney General started that a few years ago. Attorney General Kilmartin and Attorney General now, not Peter Kilmartin, the Attorney General now at present is continued that. And so they have a committee, people make nominations, and I was lucky enough to be selected. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I guess my last question here would be for you is, for anybody that's interested in law enforcement career, what words of wisdom would you have to offer for them?
I think what I would say to them is, if you're going to do this, it has to be in your heart that it's what you want to do. It can't be about, like we said, money, guns, and roses, because that's not the job.
No.
It has to be something you want more than anybody else. If you want it more than anybody else, you will succeed.
And would you agree that it becomes a way of life?
Oh, it's absolutely. If you're not ready to commit to that way of life, you're not going to have a good career. And unfortunately, I see in a lot of young officers, I wonder, it seemed more like a job to them than it was to us. But, that's just an old man complaining, grumbling.
Yeah. Me too. I'm guilty.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, I mean, and that's just taken from my personal experience. I mean, I started the academy with 24 men. There were no women on the job at the time. And there were these gigantic guys that were out of the Marines, out of the Navy SEALs and all this. And I said, I'm going to get killed up here. But you know what? They just slowly, within the first 2 weeks, we lost 8 trainees. And I would hear them on the phone, because we got to make one phone call a day, like we're in prison. One phone call. And I could hear them talking to their wives who didn't want them away that long, And so we ended up graduating 16.
Wow.
Yeah, we lost 8 in 2 weeks.
And that's the thing is your significant other in your life has to be willing to put up with all the stuff that goes along with it as well.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it sounds like a good idea till your husband's away for 2 weeks or your spouse is away for 2-3 weeks. And oh my God, I got to go through this for 5 months. On the municipal side in Rhode Island, they get to go home every night, which I think is much better. But state police still old school. You stay there for 6 days.
Yeah. Well, buddy, I tell you what, man, it's been an honor to have you on here, to have a legend, somebody with your experience to come on. And you're very humble, but you're also being very transparent about your stories here. And for our listeners, if you'd like to find out more about Anthony, you can find him on Instagram, Facebook. These are the places I found him. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, all under Anthony Pesare, and that's Anthony, Pesare. I guess common spelling, right? And then his website is Anthony M. Pesare. M as in Mary, or as in Mark, I guess I should say for a man, right? AnthonyMPesare.com. And I've actually got the site pulled up here. He has a public speaking business now. So if you're looking for somebody to come in and talk about organized crime, go check out his website. You can find his books there, but his books are, the first one was They Always Win. The second is Back in the Game, and this is part of the Gino Peterson series. And he's told us that we've got a third one that hopefully will be out. What, you think it might make it this year?
No, not this year, but next year, definitely.
Okay, so in 2026, there's something to be looking for. You can find those books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any reputable bookstore. I don't even know, is Books A Million still out there? The online Books A Million bookstores, the chain.
It's on Indigo, which I think is a Canadian outlet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can also go on his website and find out more information there.
You can buy the book on the website. Just click on it. It'll take you to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and you can order right then and there. So it's like one click off the website.
And we'll also have it on the Game of Crimes podcast website. Go to the book list there, and you'll see him at the top of the list here as soon as these episodes come out, and it will stay on the book list. As always, if you want to send me any information, you can contact me through gameofcrimespodcast.com. You can contact me through the Game of Crimes podcast at gmail.com. Come over and check us out on Patreon/Game of Crimes. Gosh, I can't remember. I can't believe I'm remembering all these. Instagram, X, and TikTok at Game of Crimes Podcast. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube, do me a favor, go over there, type in Game of Crimes Podcast in the search bar, click on the subscribe button, check out some of the episodes, click like, don't click the dislike. If you want to click the dislike, just send me an ugly comment, because those I can ignore. No, seriously, come over and check us out. Anthony, I'm not kidding you, buddy. It was an honor to have you on here. Somebody with your experience and your background, and I don't call many people on here legends. You are legendary, especially in the New England area. Thank you for your service to your state, to the citizens in the areas that you've worked, and to your country. Thanks to Mary for putting up with your crap for all those years, and your daughters as well. I hope they listen to you now.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, mine either.
No.
We still love them.
Yeah, we do.
But thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the Game of Crimes.
Thank you. I'm humbled by the invitation and the fact to talk to you. I hope we get a chance to chat again.
I do too. And so, listeners, thank you guys for continuing to come back every week. I couldn't do this without you. I don't know what the heck's wrong with you people that you keep coming back and listen to this old man talk about, well, I know why you come back. You come back to hear the studs and studettes that I bring on here, but you also come back because you enjoy playing the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, and that's the Game of Crimes. Look forward to seeing you next week. God bless. Stay safe.